Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode 207 for the week of August 26th. This is our deep dive episode where we dig into the news and industry analysis of the week and the past week to take a little bit, not just to wrap up the news, but also to maybe dive into what it means. But this week, we've got Gamescom from Germany. So we've got lots of announcements here. It's something, we always spend time on our E3 shows running down a variety of things. And so we're going to tackle this one in a similar way with kind of walking through a number of the announcements from Gamescom, talking through some of the games or the updates that were released. If we, maybe there we might even talk about some of the things that weren't discussed at Gamescom as well. But I won't be doing this alone, fortunately. SwissGuard is here to join me. How are you tonight, Swiss?
Not doing too bad. So it's fun to get these it's been kind of dry news wise. In some ways it has been extremely. There's been a lot of news coming, and then in
Yes,
other
right.
ways, yeah. In other
If
ways,
we don't
it's
talk about the Activision Blizzard lawsuits, it's been a relatively slow news piece.
so it'll be fun getting through this litany of games.
So let's dive into this litany of games. But actually, I'm going to start not with a game, but with something that Microsoft. So Microsoft had their kind of initial press conference the night before the day one of Gamescom, and people were, they were wondering, expecting what was going to be shown, how much Halo they were going to see. And the answer is not much. But we did see a number of different things. One of the things that I was thinking about back when they announced xCloud and their game streaming options, and they had talked about it as well, is that there were plans to bring it to consoles. And now they've announced that game streaming through xCloud is coming to consoles this winter. So this holiday season in December, they're rolling out game streaming both on Xbox Series X and S, but also on the Xbox One. And this, for people that may still be on an Xbox One or not be able to, or not interested to purchase a new one or find a new one, but also those that have kept their old one around, this would be a time when Tao suddenly not only having a Series X, but also still keeping his Xbox S means that he could be streaming some of the Xbox Series games that are available through xCloud, things like Microsoft Flight Simulator, along with everything else. So I think this is a nice feature. We didn't get anything about their Microsoft's streaming stick that has been rumored, but we do get streaming through consoles. So this is another way that this is the first time that streaming kind of runs to your TV natively. Certainly you could have done that with your laptop or computer, but having it run through your console provides this as well. Swiss, I know you're not an Xbox owner, but thoughts on kind of the continued expansion of Microsoft in this area?
Well, in the immediate future, it's welcome just given how hard it is at the moment to upgrade. um, so that's my initial take. But it just from like a person that kind of likes watching gaming news, it's fun to see Microsoft and Sony continue to diverge a little bit. Because it feels like, for a long time, Nintendo was over here and then Microsoft and Sony were, I mean, I know they had a little bit of a different strategy, but still felt more like parallel in how they attacked the industry. And it's kind of cool to see Microsoft continue to move into the service sphere. And um, but my next thought is like, if xCloud is the future, like where does that place the Xbox Series X and S? And like, I'm kind of, I know we're not there yet quite, but it's like, is like Microsoft's future like a Stadia? I still don't. I'm still not like 100% understanding, and this is from the non-Microsoft guy, so like where why you pursue like hardware in in one sense, but also this like cloud-based um, strategy in another. So
Yeah, I think that is a good question. And you're certainly right about the divergent kind of strategies between Microsoft and Sony this generation. Last generation, I agree with you. Like it wasn't drastically different. And now we see with Game Pass, it really is starting to, and has continued to kind of diverge a little bit further with their, being able to stream games on mobile devices and tablets, and now through their consoles. I mean, I think in some ways it it bides their time for people that can't, like you said, can't find a new generation of consoles. That if people still have their old ones, they can be running some of those. But at the same time, not everything, not all the new games are going to be on Game Pass Cloud. That we do get, we just got an update like things like Fallen Jedi Order, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. There we go. I got it eventually. The Respawn game just went to cloud, but it's been on Game Pass for a while. Some of the other updates, things like we don't know if Back for Blood is going to be cloud available right away. So, I mean, it does provide some rationale for why having a hardware solution is still viable, and it certainly provides, for those that are running in 4K and want frames per second, that this definitely is going to keep them in that mind share, because or give them a reason to still have a hardware unit. We know that with Game Pass streaming, it only goes up to 1080p. It does run at 60 frames per second, so that is beneficial for, I think that this does, especially pairing this with if they come out and Halo launches with streaming, it would be interesting to see kind of where that lands if an Xbox One owner is going to play Halo on their console, or they're going to play it through xCloud, that you may end up finding that if you're running on a 1080p, playing through cloud on, not in multiplayer for the, potential lag, but playing through the campaign, playing through cloud may actually give you a better experience, because you're going to get the frames per second, where on the older generation you're probably not going to get those 60 frames. But some of those details about Halo we did not get. But we did get some other information of other Microsoft ones. We got some new content for Flight Simulator. They're coming out with races, uh, air races, which kind of fits along with Ubisoft's open beta this week with Riders Republic and that aspect there. Although races in a flight sim is an interesting combo, because Flight Simulator is not an arcadey type of game, but it does work pretty well on with the controller, and so it may be one other way that people can engage with this if the idea of the flight sim aspect of it is a little too intense or intimidating. That does provide them another path in. We got a little bit of Halo news, not a whole lot, but really the biggest news is the official release date of December 8th. And this is coming the week after the news kind of percolated around that Halo won't launch with a co-op campaign or Forge at launch without a real date there. So I'll be interested to see what kind of state Halo Infinite actually launches in, and how much of their focus ends up being on multiplayer. We did get a new multiplayer trailer, so it makes sense that as there's still questions around the campaign, that they continue to focus on the multiplayer aspect of that as well, which will be free for all players, whether or not you have Game Pass or not. That the multiplayer piece will be free.
so just to I did see the like the story I don't know, like the teaser little story thing that they did. But so on December 8th, it's not that it's not launching with the it's not the campaign that's not launching, it's campaign co-op. Okay,
That
so
is correct. Yep. And
okay.
it will have the campaign at launch. They've been pretty adamant about that. That, there were rumors and they even, addressed the fact that they discussed potentially launching it without the campaign and only the multiplayer, but it will launch with the campaign, just not co-op.
Yeah.
So
So from an outsider, I there's like I have two perspectives on that. Um, One is in 2021, launching the multiplayer and the campaign separately isn't a scary thing. We're seeing it diverge in a lot of franchises, so I don't think that would have been a huge deal. But my impression of Halo's campaign, again from an outsider, is the co-op aspect was something that appealed to a lot of people. I'm not sure how many people really played Halo um, single player, and I mean, I know a lot of people did, but like, I think people embraced the multiplayer aspect of the campaign much more so than they would in like a Call of Duty franchise or something like that. And I'm not even sure have any of the Call of Duties, like, I'm not a COD guy either. Like that's, I know that Call of Duty really stresses that in their campaigns, like that single player experience, right? I'm not even sure if they've had co-op.
I'm trying to think. In some of they've had split screen,
Okay.
so that you could. I think in Cold War there is a split screen option. I don't remember if it's split screen for multiplayer or for the campaign, but I know that there is a split screen option there. So, but again, that's definitely not an area that they've leaned into in terms of co-op outside of a few modes here and there.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, zombies definitely is co-op in Call of Duty and certainly has been a focus.
I don't view that as like a campaign oriented thing as much. Um, yeah, again, sorry for like ignorant first person shooter guy trying to have commentary on this. This is like my I'm playing games over here, and this is kind of my impression when I kind of glance over at the Halo and COD players. But um, I don't know. Like I don't think it would have been as big of a deal if they had delayed it, because it does feel like a little bit of a letdown launching the single player without being able to play with your friends.
Yeah, I think the internet would agree with you on that one. That it certainly is because playing through you know, playing through Halos with multiplayer, whether it's on the couch or LAN parties or online, has definitely been a focus of going through those campaigns on harder and harder difficulties. It, 343 got a little bit of blowback when they announced that Halo 5 wouldn't have couch multiplayer and split screen. And so now to come at this point after already delaying the game certainly is another a knock and disappointment. But I could also see that, big Halo lore fans will want to play through it. And by the time that the multiplayer campaign goes out, that they've already played through the regular campaign at least once. And potentially they're jumping into the co-op campaign on a harder difficulty. But yeah, I think it is another sign of its troubled development. If I think people were still kind of surprised the fact that up until just today or yesterday, we didn't really have a hard release date for Halo, but now we do. And I think also the fact that we have a December release date
Yeah.
means that they are pushing this as
As
far
far
back
back
as
as
they
yep,
can.
that's
Yep.
exactly what I was thinking. Like you're not gonna get much. You don't have much more wiggle room after the 8th. Um,
Yeah, and this is kind of the window where we would see, we saw what Far Cry 4 come into that December window. Ubisoft's done a couple December launches,
Oddly
but
enough,
usually
it Smash Brothers actually released on like
early
probably
December.
the
Yep.
December 7th or something like that one
Yeah.
year. But
Yep. Yeah, when they push back past the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States and grabs it there. So while we're waiting for Halo, we also get the announcement of a Halo skinned console, which has sold out and has gone for great scalping rates
I th-
already.
I thought that was funny. They're like pre-order now. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we get a Master Chief controller, and we also get a controller, a very bright colored kind of. I don't know, it almost feels 90s inspired controller of for Horizon, Forza Horizon 5. Lots of bright blues and pinks and yellows there. That's already up for sale. Uh, so bits and pieces, but not a whole lot from Microsoft. We do get some other announcements. Crusader Kings, which has been out on Game Pass for PC, is coming to consoles as well, and also a whole handful of Humble games. A Humble bundle. The Humble games are also a publisher of a bunch of indie titles, are coming day one on Game Pass, and this was one of the games that Tao played last week with Dodgeball Academia. It was a Humble published game that came out day one. So they listed up like 12 other games coming uh, throughout the course of the next 6 months on Game Pass. So as we finish the night before and head into day one, now we get some actual game announcements. We get the rumored Marvel XCOM crossover game from 2K that was leaked back around E3, and it's Firaxis developing Midnight Sun, kind of magic based, almost like in the. I'm surprised there's not Morbius in there, the vampire, right? Because we get Blade and we get uh, Ghost Rider, we get Magica from the X-Men, we get Doctor Strange. Definitely kind of a magic heavy character roster, but we also get people like, we still get Wolverine because claws can rip up the dead just as much as the alive. But yes, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. We've got gameplay coming in September, is what they said. It's destined to launch on, well, at least right now, it's scheduled to launch on March 22nd or March of 22. Not a specific date in March, which also means potentially it might slide, or they're going to squeeze it in right at the end of March in order to hit their fiscal year. But I like the idea of it. I'm down for a creative spin on Marvel with some story based tactical combat. I think the characters that they have certainly seem like they could be an interesting mixture of people. Um, who else do we get here? We get Iron Man as well.
Yeah,
The,
that's what I was about to say. I saw Iron Man, but non-comic book guy can. I identified Iron Man and Wolverine successfully when I was
there
watching
you
the trailer.
there you go. Well, and that may be exactly why they're in there.
Yep.
Is that in addition to some of the kind of side characters, although somebody like Ghost Rider has been in iterations of the Avengers, but definitely more in kind of the magic demon darker sphere within the universe. I wonder if we get some other characters, if this is the full roster, or if there's some other unlockable characters as you go
Yeah.
through the game.
There's going to be some sort of DLC that you can purchase.
Right. And there
Uh,
should be, right? I mean,
yeah,
with a comic book property, it certainly makes sense that you would be bringing in other characters as well.
I just wish we could have seen even like a tantalizing hint of gameplay. We just got like a cinematic trailer.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see kind of what the camera angle is and how tight it is. If it is tighter, kind of like, oh, what was it? Chimera Squad was a smaller squad and a little tighter compared to some of the larger overview map that you could get with XCOM. Although the camera even in XCOM is kind of controllable, so you could zoom out a little bit further or stick in and make it feel a little more,
So
character actiony.
so you're definitely just expecting a Marvel skin on XCOM. You don't think that they're going to try to do anything different?
I don't know. I mean, yes, I am. I will say, if it's simply a Marvel skin on XCOM, I'm fine with that. Because I like the property, I like strategy gameplay. I'm down for that. The Transformer Tactics game, that Transformer XCOM, which wasn't necessarily a great game, uh, still was something that was interesting because of the strategy element in that. I mean, at the same time, I'm also someone that owns Project Steam on the 3DS. So I like that gameplay. So, but yeah, I could see where they could it'll be interesting to see if they keep it to the grid base or if they're doing something different. Almost in the what was it? The Mario and Rabbits new one, where it seems a little more, there's a zone or an area where you have the ability to move around in. If they try to provide a little more movement rather than simply just kind of moving chess pieces around, I could see, given the characters and the animations, that it certainly could be possible for them to take a little bit more of a different tact here.
Yeah. That I was the Valkyria Chronicles kind of style. I just noticed I like found Valkyria Chronicles 4 on my Switch the other day, and I forgot that I had it. But
Nice.
I'm
Yeah,
glad that I'm glad to see, like you. I'm glad to see some strategy game love from like so.
exactly. So let's go to another game announcement that we got, which is not necessarily a strategy game, but a big old open world kind of over the top. Well, at least the franchise has been over the top recently, or at least in the past, with Saints Row. We get a Saints Row reboot, which is kind of is exactly that. It's taking a whole different set of characters, that it's putting them kind of in their start of their rise in their criminal world, and throws them into a number of different cities. It sounds like it's going to be a very large space, a very large open world with a lot of different zones skinned on Vegas and LA and some other places as well. It is coming out on the 25th of February. I'm a Saints Row fan. I enjoy kind of the overtop humor of it. So I'll be curious on kind of what tone this ends up taking. I would guess, since it is still Volition, they're going to keep some of that humor, but the Saints Row humor from the early 2010s is not necessarily humor that, it is maybe not so politically correct and doesn't necessarily land. And I can see where a reboot would make a lot of sense, that somebody wouldn't need to know Johnny Gat and all the other people to enjoy this. I will be curious, because this is coming, it's an open world game that's coming across both consoles, what that means for gameplay, what that means for kind of the world itself. Like, do we see things scaled back on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, whether it's frame rates, whether it's number of characters in the world? I doesn't sound like there are any zones are prohibited from the new consoles to the old consoles. But what the performance looks like, I'll be very curious to see going forward. And this is true for our next game as well. What the differences look like between current generation and the previous generation. And that next game, Swiss, I would think it is on your list of disappointments that it's not coming out this year, but glad that it's coming, and that is Horizon Forbidden West. It was rumored and then confirmed that it was being delayed, and now we get a firm date, which is February 22nd. And it's still slated to launch both for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. All the gameplay that we've seen up until this point has been on PlayStation 5. With Sony's acquisition of Nixxes, the PC port house, it also seems likely that Horizon Forbidden West PC port is on the near horizon as well. Couldn't say that sentence without hitting Horizon more than once. So,
I
Swiss
yeah, I'm I mean,
date. Glad for the fact that they're taking some time.
well for me like um on the one hand it's like from a business perspective, I feel like that would have been better hitting that October, November release window as your big game heading into the holiday season. But I was gonna say not everybody has a PS5. I think most people are gonna want to play it on PS5. I don't think they're gonna want to just. I feel like me as somebody that's been trying to get a PS5 and been unable to do so, I am not going to settle and get it on a PS4. I mean, I think a lot of us have plans to get the PS5, so having it pushed out is like, okay, like I don't have my PS5 yet anyway. Um,
Yeah, and they've already confirmed that supply strains are still going to continue
yeah.
throughout the holiday season.
So, um, I'm not terribly worried about the date. If I recall correctly, I think that was the exact same window roughly that the first Horizon Zero Dawn came out. I think it was that February March time frame.
I think you're right. I think it was early in the year, late in the fiscal year.
So, but as far as you're mentioning the, you know, straddling console generations and games continue to do because like normally in a normal I would say console cycle by now we wouldn't be having these games that have one foot in the previous cycle anymore. Those would have been flushed out by now. But I think it also is just emblematic of the way the industry's gone. Like on PC, we've always had games that you know, based on your hardware, you can scale the graphics, and it's just like, okay, now we're in earnest really starting to experience that at the console level, and even amongst generations, right? I mean, we have multiple SKUs of Xbox Series now, so I'm not as worried that like they're designing around like lower end hardware um, and limiting the experience for those that have the next generation of console. Um,
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, that this is even in the last generation between 360 and Xbox One or PlayStation 3 and 4, it wasn't, I mean, you still got a few titles that would launch on both, but it wasn't nearly the same degree that we're having here. But that's also because the architecture for game development and the hardware that they're playing on is very PC based in terms of exactly what you're talking about. That this is it's the difference between having an SSD and a better graphics card or not. That you can still play both games. You may not be playing on ultra settings and you may take a little longer to load, but you still have that ability on PC. And I think that's always a good comparison to make when people are kind of questioning what it does for development.
yeah, and I mean, like as console and you know, uh, first party like IP centric as Sony is, like the fact that they're now like embracing this, throw the games on PC as well and get some additional revenue there. Like everybody's kind of like they're, except for Nintendo, you know, there is no single console release anymore really. It just isn't a thing.
Yeah, they're definitely few and far between. And you know, outside of Returnal and Ratchet and Clank, there really hasn't been any kind of console exclusive on either
So
this year.
so before that kind of somewhat segues into my next thought. I want to like inject a thought here before we get to the next set of few games because before I watched most of the initial night Gamescom uh, on YouTube, and before I had watched it, I hit a few articles where it's like top stories from Gamescom, just to get a sense of what to expect. And the games that I was seeing, like Flight Simulator, Halo Infinite, um, then I saw like the Marvel, Fire Access and Saints Row reboot, and then Horizon Forbidden West. Like my thought was, wow, there's not much fresh ideas here. It's a lot of franchises, established franchises, sequels, reboots, and I was gonna malign that a little bit on the show tonight. Um, these next few games,
Well, you know, this
yeah,
is the show to stand on your old man soapbox and
well,
take a little concern with it.
I feel like the biggest stuff was, from the big companies, there's nothing fresh. Like Riders Republic could be a counter argument, like that's a new IP from
But
Ubisoft,
it's
but
kind of an evolution of Trails and
yeah.
you know the kind of extreme sports games that were popular back in the PlayStation 1 era.
So I don't know. I kind of like I wish it's fun when there's these big conventions to get like just something new. Like even if it's like that teaser of Starfield, it's like, oh wow, we got something different coming from Bethesda. But um, yeah, it's I don't know. Like
I kind of
I'm
felt the
obvious.
same way coming out of E3
Yeah.
that there wasn't we get a lot of sequels, we get a lot of existing IPs. Occasionally you get a new idea, but really and maybe it's just the maturity of the industry. The movie industry is not drastically different. It's rare that you get something that really breaks genre mold. And certainly given the expense of game development, outside of smaller indie titles, it's very risk adverse of an industry, and we see that in either licensed properties and crossovers. Some of the other things that we didn't talk about were things like the more Lego Star Wars
Mhm.
and Sega crossover with Persona and Monkey Ball. We get some of the other pieces in here, but again, it's leveraging existing mindshare rather than trying to carve out something new.
Yeah, Jurassic Park, theme park simulator game or whatever. It's I don't know. Like kind of as I'm watching it and looking over it, and I think I think that example, I think that was when I really thought maybe I should get have my soapbox moment was when I saw the Lego Star Wars, and I'm like, how many Lego Star Wars games have there been? How many times have we tread down this path? And I've played like one Lego. I think I have like, I mean, we have Lego Jurassic Park, I think, on PS4 or something. That's never been my cup of tea, but it's. I think that's emblematic, perfectly emblematic of like the malaise I see sometimes in the industry, and I don't know. Like, I mean, again, I'm excited about Forbidden West, but not as excited as I was to play the original Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Like Horizon Zero Dawn, the E3 when that was announced, that was a game that again excited me about a PlayStation 4 because it was a new IP. It looked like an exciting world, and it's always harder to come back to something like that because it doesn't have that kind of allure of the new.
So
But so let's
there are
let's
some, yeah.
slide off that soapbox a little bit because the next three games that we'll hit are new or new kind of takes on things. And so one is Jet. This is the Sword and Sorcery Brothers. Uh, this is was announced at the PlayStation 5 announcement stream. And it's coming both to PlayStation 4 and 5, and it's kind of pushed back and delayed. This is a kind of space exploration-y game coming on October 5th. We also get a Doki V. Maybe that's how you say it. Kind of an open world, cartoony uh, monster battling with a little bit of, sky sailing and skateboarding and for transversal. You know, I think
It feels like a
this
mashup of a lot of these like 10-year-old kid MMO franchises type things.
Yeah, yeah, I could see. I mean, but it also, given the popularity of things like Roblox, I could
Yeah.
see where somebody could look at that and go, "Yeah, what if we combine Roblox and Pokemon together?" Uh, Anytime that somebody throws in a Pokemon-like game, I'll be interested to see how they do it and how, if they evolve that standard a little bit. Um, and then we get Sifu, which is kind of action ninja combat coming out on PC and PlayStation 5. That's coming February 22nd as well. So the same day as Horizon Forbidden West. So we get some kind of big first party established IPs, but we also get a couple smaller things in there as well. Sifu, the gameplay looks kind of frenetic, almost kind of not quite as fast paced as like a platinum game, but definitely looks to have a good sense of flow to it and a good kind of action combat. Art style looks neat. Thoughts on any one of these?
I'm always up for like I'm a fan of Platinum, and this is a case where it's like at least it's something different, and that's where the indie stuff kind of, I don't want to say indie necessarily, but the smaller developers are kind of stepping up. So you know, maybe that one would probably be on my list. I always like the space exploration games that really try to push exploration like that and kind of scratch that itch. So like, I mean, No Man's Sky has been doing it a long time now, and I applaud any developer that makes uh, Robert Space Industries look bad.
No, I think Jet was even back on the announcement. That was one of the things that really seemed interesting to me on the PlayStation 5. I'll come back and I'll agree with you on Sifu. I'm definitely interested in that. In some ways, that feels, looking at the gameplay, it's maybe not as much ninjas as I had initially seen some gameplay. There's a lot of kind of brawler, beat 'em up, virtual fighter kind of aspects in there in terms of the gameplay as well. And it looks like it could be, if that combat flow works really well, it certainly could be a really enjoyable kind of brawler uh, game. So let's jump from one brawler into another. Just as a toss away, TMNT Shredder's Revenge, the kind of, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade inspired new game that's got a good lineage behind it, is now also going to have April O'Neil as a fifth playable character. So but it's coming out in spring of 22. So this was a game that is originally slated to launch this fall and has been pushed back until spring of 22 as well. This Swiss, I will say that yes, this is getting back on that soapbox of established IPs, but I'm down for a little nostalgia as well. So
Um, yeah, I mean, maybe it's because this is the one that's like the old school, right? Like the Super NES, like heavily inspired.
yes, this is very much in that
Um,
pixel kind of side scroller aspect.
so it almost feels it almost feels fresh because it's a throwback. In a way, like it's a we don't I don't know. Anytime like we don't have another battle royale or another open world, like massively open world type game, like it's like a good thing sometimes. But yeah.
All right. So one other announcement that came, and we knew it was coming, and not so much timed along with Gamescom, but not necessarily part of Gamescom, was Bungie's Witch Queen expansion and information that came out on the 24th. So the Witch Queen expansion, Bungie already talked about that last year, that it was part of their kind of cycle that they had kind of teased that already. It was supposed to originally come this fall, but between COVID and other delays with last year's game and this expansion, it's coming in February. I believe February 22nd again. So it's
It's
February
a
22nd.
big
Lots
day.
going on that day. Uh, Witch Queen expansion, it's going to add. It doesn't add another subclass, but it does take some of the subclass design and structure of Stasis that gives you a little more flexibility, and they're bringing that back to the other older subclasses. They're going to start with Void and kind of expand that out over time. The big bad in this is the Taken King's sister, the Witch Queen, who's been kind of hinted at in the last couple of seasons as being behind things. There's story and kind of hints at the fact that even Osiris may be under her spell, and so lots of potential here. We get not necessarily, no, kind of new enemies. We get Taken enemies, but they're wielding the light. So they have Taken enemies who are going to be modeled on Hunter, Titan, and Warlock types, and there's going to be additional kind of complexity to the gameplay in terms of beating them. We know that you can You can pre-order a number of different packages for this. One includes 4 different seasons along with the expansion. It's also stated that the expansion is going to have crafting weapons. They haven't really gone into detail about what that means in terms of weapon crafting. It also, and this is an interesting one, both for you and I, Swiss, and for Vela, is that the campaign is going to have a harder difficulty as well. Like once you beat it once, you can go back and bring it up to a higher difficulty. This was something that was present in the original Destiny, that you could go back and run story missions and choose kind of 3 different light levels in terms of giving you a difficulty structure. And that's the first time that that's happened within Destiny 2. We also get a few teases. Bungie's going to be celebrating their 30th anniversary this winter, this fall, and they've already launched their 30th anniversary kind of gear on the Bungie store with some shirts and mugs and things like that talk, they have their Bungie 30th. And you also have the ability for $25 to buy a Bungie 30th anniversary celebration kit within Destiny as well. That comes with some weapon skins. The Galahorn is coming back, the rocket launcher from Destiny 1, a Galahorn inspired Sparrow, and a number of different armor sets as well. So lots of kind of expected Destiny news. The crafting system will be interesting to see how that plays out. From a lore perspective, this is something they've been building to. It is going to be kind of interesting because be interesting to see how they sustain, or if they try to sustain, the player base between the launch of the new season, which just started this week, and February 22nd. We've got all of fall and 2 months into next year before they turn over a new season. So that's a longer period of time than the kind of 3-month season that Destiny has been previously in. And this kind of doubles it to some degree. Swiss, I know you've been heavy. Oh, no, we also get a new weapon type, right? We get a glaive, a weapon type, a melee weapon that is going to play in first person rather than right now swords switch you to third person. The glaive, which still kind of looks like a sword, is going to keep you in first person. So I don't, it'll be potentially interesting. It does add a little bit, how that balances with things. Some stuff here, some stuff definitely is interesting. I certainly wish that it was coming sooner in terms of giving me a reason to come back and play Destiny a little bit more. But thoughts here, Swiss, you've been in and out of Destiny. You've kind of been out of it for a while now. Does this give you a reason to kind of plan out and come back into Destiny again?
Um, yes, if only because like the main campaigns have always been what's drawn me in. And so when we have, you know, uh, Forsaken and you know, Beyond Light, those were the ones when I kind of got the most excited because that's when like I feel like I'm progressing along an arc and I don't feel so locked into like the MMO framework. It concerns me a little bit with the crafting, with that sort of thing. But like, I think the biggest thing for me, like it's hard. There's so much in there where they're always kind of releasing in the seasons the little stories, and the stories are like so. It's not like playing like an old school shooter campaign, and so it's been hard for me to get excited lately because it's just I don't feel like I have enough time to devote to it to really get to really mine everything out of it that I could. But
Yeah, I've enjoyed the stories as the seasons have progressed, but I kind of follow them in hindsight. I'm reading about them more than I'm experiencing them because a lot of the story that is unlocked assumes that you're playing along with every week, and you have the season pass, and you're doing the different content and running that season's special events to
Hmm.
be able to unlock that story. So I've definitely been following it, but I haven't been actually participating it in a
Right.
while. And you're right. In some ways, I think it makes a lot of sense for the live game aspect of what they're doing, but for players who just enjoy a good campaign, it does kind of leave us
Yeah.
in the dust. And even my uncle and I, who we would run strikes on a regular basis on our weekly strikes, have kind of fallen off toward the end of this season, in part because we're just not playing at that higher level.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I understand the business aspect and the vision, um, but it's like, I mean, we're grown-ups who game, so it's different when you're in college, or single, like right after college and everything. You have a lot more free time to devote to something like this, and I think probably that's been, when I really tried to invest in it, it was to the exclusion of a lot of other games. So I have a certain amount of bandwidth to play stuff, and I think at some point I kind of made that decision. I'm gonna jump off Destiny and see what else is out there, and then I ended up picking up a random game like Judgment that I've had a lot of fun with that I probably wouldn't have put on my radar because it's not one of those, you know, big name story titles that I would have normally gravitated to. So
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, one that I've wrestled with and we've talked about on this show. Like, between live games like Destiny, or kind of grindy games like Division, or even just season pass games like Tao has talked about, in terms of keeping up with Call of Duty or Rocket League or Fortnite or any other game that has a season pass, there's almost an expectation that that becomes your dominant game, rather than kind of the dabbling and exploration that we tend to kind of
well,
try for in a lot of ways.
that's the other thing though. Like, are we normal gamers?
Maybe
like,
not so much anymore, right? I think
it,
we are of a certain generation or a certain mindset, but yeah, I think a lot of other, I look at my son who he'll play a handful of games, but most of them are Minecraft, Splitgate, and Counter Strike or Apex. It's a small segment of games that he and his friend kind of cycle through on a regular basis. And he's interested as I talk about other games, but what he tends to come back to are this kind of series of staples.
yeah, and that's it's. I kind of look at that, and then I look at, back when I was in college, and I mean, I know COD is still going on today, but like COD was still a thing back then. You had your Call of Duty players and your Madden players, and um, people were good at it. They were really into it, but eventually you just stop playing, and uh, there's no other, like, what else do you pick up after that? Like, it's for us, I feel like we're always looking for, like, okay, how is the industry evolving, and and what else can we expect to see? Um, but when you end up with, like, almost associating gaming with like a particular type of video game and franchise even, it's limited and you'll burn out eventually. So I don't know. I know I'm getting a little bit philosophical here, but like, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know that you burn out though. I mean, I think it really depends on, you know, people watch the same type of movies, or they enjoy certain types of things again and again. People come back to sports game, or to actual real life sports. It becomes a hobby more than it becomes well, I mean, gaming is a hobby, but it really is just a totally different mindset. And I don't know that I've completely wrapped my mind around it, or even that I think that it's necessarily healthy for a diverse genre of entertainment to be so tracked in. From a publishing standpoint, it makes a ton of sense, right?
Mhm.
It is the what microtransactions always tried to be, that it's that steady drip of engagement and opening up the pocketbook. Uh, and it's done so by creating long-term investment. I would have thought that my son would have been burned out on Minecraft after 10 years of playing Minecraft, but that's not the case. He's still on a regular basis playing it. It's very possible because of the nature of some of these games. We kept waiting, and we are still, the conversation around people who are waiting for Fortnite to fizzle was something that was talked about when it was so big 2 years ago. And now it's more in the dialogue of of gaming. It's more just accepted that it's its own platform, right? We're getting, not only do we get pop culture skins, but now we've got a Martin Luther King video documentary coming, and it becomes more accepted. And I think that potentially is a shift in generations, that as people are watching streamers run the same types of games over and over again, it be it, you know I could see where it will be interesting, right? I can see where people may certainly burn out on things, um, but at the same time, I would have thought we would have been seeing some of that already.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Um, I mean, yeah, I distinctly remember for having those discussions about Fortnite and kind of. I mean, I remember when Fortnite first came out, and we mocked it because we're like, okay, whatever, you did your PUBG thing, and um, yeah, like here we are. Um, I will say to wrap up on the Switch Queen though, I know like Savathun and everything, it's been leading up to it. So just the fact that they've been building to this um, provides a certain level of excitement.
Yeah, I would agree. Yep. And because this is a deep dive episode, we're not just reporting on the news. We give ourselves a chance to get on that soapbox, to think a little navel gazingly about the industry and us as players. So let's just wrap up with maybe just a quick news hit here, something that is constructive for the game industry after still ongoing articles and changes around the Activision Blizzard lawsuits, with uh, Overwatch going to change the name of Jesse McCree because he was named after someone who has been fired from Blizzard for harassment. That we have California expanding the lawsuit because they suspect that was document shredding going on at Activision. So in a wonderful, for you and I as long-term industry kind of observers, to have EA be the ones to come out, who were, at one point in time, the EA wives of the mid 2000s and the most hated company, and to be on the good side of gaming is an interesting turn. But yes, EA has announced that they are making 5 of their game patents freely available to anyone. Some of these game patents are relatively, very much on the design element end. Some tech in Madden and FIFA about brightness and contrast and different colors to help vision accessibility. There are another one related to sound and technology to assist those hearing impaired. And then another accessibility one. All of these are related to accessibility. The fifth one is the ping system within Apex and some of the technology behind the ping system, which was definitely one of the genre evolving pieces that Apex brought to the table when it launched. And to kind of put that out there for all developers is is a I guess a relatively constructive sign for EA, it's good PR for the company, and it's good for potential developers to have these accessibility tools that other people have done the legwork, the research, the development, the coding for, that they'll be able to use within their game designs as well.
So, um, when I saw this, like one of the first thoughts I had was like open source, and it even talks about that in the article. So, uh, the code for the color blindness that you alluded to, like that color blindness, brightness, contrast, they're going to put it on GitHub, which is the open source. Like you
Yep, good
doesn't
for
necessarily
all
happen.
kinds of programmers use. Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily happen to be. You can make it private if you want, but it's not designed for that. It's designed for people to share their code in through collaboration, improve it. Um, but this is very much like a lot of companies will have their kind of open source flavors or arms or something that allows them to kind of it's goodwill in the industry, and just it's kind of like I think there was a mentality before open source really kicked off for like, this is our IP, this is our thing, we need to, if we share it, we're not going to profit on it, and they didn't see the added benefits. So, like as you said, EA's going to get a lot of goodwill from this, and it'll be good. But just having it on GitHub's actually owned by Microsoft now. But it's not like when they bought it, they didn't just like say, okay, it's not a free sandbox anymore. Like everything's locked down. It didn't go that way. Um, so that was just a neat little like thing aside that I
Yeah, I
picked up
think the
from it.
the
But
color blindness and the sound stuff could really be used in a lot of different development tools, right? Like it could be a user interface piece that becomes
yeah,
beneficial. There's lots
it
of potential applications.
it doesn't. But the other thing is like, if you're EA, does it really benefit you to like keep that locked down? Like I all I can think is, I mean, I guess you could license the technology a little bit, but it doesn't. I'm not sure how much profit you're going to get by licensing out the color blindness versus the good PR that you're going to get, and even just building relationships in the industry of sharing that with other people at the professional level. So yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right. Like if you peel back the rosy PR layer of this, there's not many other options that EA probably had. I mean, they could sit on it, but
yeah,
it doesn't really, like you said, they're not going to get much for licensing it. It's probably not going to be a big, market for it. But putting it out there allows, they get a nice little PR boost, and and I agree with you. It's a good development kind of colleague aspect, developer
yeah.
colleague aspect to put out there.
And then even looking beyond just EA with this, it's like, I mean, that's why things, I think Unreal Engine at this point, you can download it and you can develop with it. And they want you to have the tool. And a lot of these companies, um, in a similar fashion, will make their tools available for free to high schools and universities. It's like there, yeah, there's the PR and the that aspect of it, but also it's you're using our stuff now. So when you actually get to the point where you're big enough to spend money, you'll want to continue to use our stuff. So um, for these, this is a little bit different. Like I understand it's not like a game engine, but um, at some point it's good to recognize, hey, this could be a win-win for us, and like, why do we need to be corporate bad guy all the time? Where it's not cutthroat. We can everybody can everybody can game, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great point and a good positive note to end on for tonight. So thanks, Swiss. Thanks for all the discussion back and forth about Gamescom and some of the announcements and other things. A lot more than I thought was going to happen this week. So that's been nice to have the show here to wrap it up. Next week, we'll be back. It will be our game experience show, our first one of September, as we turn the calendar page or scroll to the next month, that our Pix Plays assignment. So for those of you listening and here with us tonight, tomorrow, 6 months in the future. Every other week here, because we are, as Swiss said, because we are grown-ups who game, we also like to give ourselves a little bit of homework. And the homework that we gave ourselves last week on our Picks Play was to dive into a game that has some type of real world or pop culture crossover. As we were talking about tonight, there's plenty of that going on within Fortnite, and other games have taken that on as well. So
We
yes,
we
Swiss.
we missed a
Thank you for
very
raising your hand.
yes. We missed when we did our Gamescom rundown. We missed the announcement that of the Disney Jungle Book Fall Guys crossover.
Yes, that's right. I did see the Fall Guys Fall, yes, and I didn't look at it enough to know that if it was a Disney Jungle Book or
It,
if it's
it's
just
it's
Jungle Book, the
it's
the
King
out of
Louis.
copyright.
Well,
Okay,
I saw King Louis, so I assumed it's the Disney Jungle Book. But you're right. I
that's
didn't go
good.
into that article too deeply either.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I could see where there is a Venn diagram that there, given the given the art style of Fall Guys, that it fits nicely with kind of cartoony properties. So yes, thank you for hitting that one kind of essential news story that we missed here. But it's also a nice tie into that crossover pop culture aspect of our game assignment here. So next week I'll be back here, and so will you, Swiss. So it's always good to have us back. But we're going to be joined by Game Logic, who will be back on the show next week to wrap up what he's been playing over the last 2 weeks as well. Swiss, any other thoughts, any other news items striking you, or any quick shout outs you want to give?
No, I am struggling with the Pix plays though. Uh, got to admit, like, I just most of the games I play, I don't do this battle pass season like, oh, look at the latest skin I can download type stuff. So
So here's what I'll put my library teacher hat on and say, you know what you could do for this assignment is sit with your kids as they play Minecraft and have them browse through the store of all the different skins and see how they respond. Right? You don't even have to necessarily play it, but just look at the different skins and see, do your kids resonate? Does the Star Wars skin, is that something that's exciting for them? Is the Mario skin exciting for them? Does is there value in those types of crossovers?
well, if I get stuck buying additional Minecraft skins, I'm going to.
Dad,
We'll see.
you like Mario too, Dad.
That's true. That's true. We did have a birthday this week, and one of like there was an Arms Springman T-shirt and a Super Mario backpack given uh, as gifts. So
Nice. That's fun. There you go. Oh, Arms. Yeah, I played a little bit of Arms for the first time in a long time with my nephew who's going into first grade, and I had to keep pulling him back as he punched and kept walking closer and closer to the TV. So yes, but I have not launched that game in a long time. So it's fun to hear that your kids are still enjoy the characters there, and they're creative characters. All right. So for myself, DBqhams and SwissGuard, this has been episode 207 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast here on the E2KG network. We'll be back again next week. And until then, play the games you love and love those you play with, and take care of each other. Good night, everybody.